There's a certain kind of silence that only comes after a very loud mistake. Not to be fair, the silence of an empty room. Not the quiet of a calm morning. This is the silence that falls when a group of people realize, all at the same time, that they just humiliated the wrong man. You have seen that silence on faces before. Maybe you've caused it. Maybe you've been the one standing inside it, trying to hold your expression steady while everything shifts around you. This story is about that moment. But, to understand the moment, you need to understand the hours that came before it. Because no one mocks a man in a single breath. Disrespect builds. It stacks, layer by layer, small insult after small insult, until someone decides today is the day they'll say it out loud. Today, honestly, is the day they'll point at the quiet one in the corner and say, "Step aside, rookie. Let the real ones handle this." They said it. He stepped aside. And, then, he handled it. What happened next lasted less than 4 seconds. What it meant lasted much, much longer. Marcus Webb didn't look like what he was. That was the thing people always got wrong about him, and he had long since stopped correcting them. He was 34 years old, medium height, lean in the way that doesn't photograph well but functions better than most bodies on this earth. He had a face that forgot to be interesting, forgettable jaw, calm eyes, a mouth that didn't move much unless it had something worth saying. He wore plain clothes, and he drove a plain car. He lived in a small house on the edge of Pensacola, Florida, with 2 houseplants he kept alive and a punching bag in the garage he hit every morning at 5. He had been a United States Navy SEAL for 11 years. He had also held a 4th-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu since he was 26. Before that, 3 years of Muay Thai, and, before that, high school wrestling, 2 state titles, 1 broken collarbone, and a coach who told him the only way to lose a fight you prepared for was to panic. Marcus Webb didn't panic, and he had left active duty 8 months before the day this story is about, and he had taken a job coordinating security logistics for a private firm that contracted with government facilities. The work was administrative. Plus, meetings, spreadsheets, threat assessments on paper. His colleagues were good people, experienced, professional, mostly former law enforcement. Nobody knew his full background. He hadn't offered it, and they hadn't asked the right questions. His team lead was a man named Dylan Cross. Dylan was 41, broad across the shoulders, with the particular confidence of a man who had been the most capable person in every room he had entered for the last 15 years. He had done 2 tours in the Army, infantry, and he carried those 2 tours like a badge he wore on the inside of his shirt, always there, always available to flash when the moment called for it. He wasn't a bad man. He was a man who had never been outclassed in front of an audience, and that specific safety had calcified into arrogance without him noticing. He called Marcus to be fair, the new guy 6 months after Marcus stopped being the new guy. It was never mean enough to address. Just consistent, just small enough to slide under the line. The way Dylan repeated instructions Marcus hadn't asked for. The way he said "I'll handle it" when Marcus offered input in meetings. The way he talked to the other guys on the team, veteran to veteran, shared language, inside jokes about deployments, and let Marcus sit slightly outside that circle without ever quite inviting him in. The other guys followed Dylan's lead, which not maliciously. That's how it works in groups, and someone sets the social temperature, and everyone else adjusts to it without thinking. Marcus adjusted. He did his work. He came in early and left when the job was done. He sent good reports and caught errors in assessments that would have embarrassed the team later. He didn't need them to know. He needed the work to be right. Then, honestly, came the Thursday in February that changed the entire architecture of how that team would see him for the rest of the time they worked together. The firm had arranged a hand-to-hand defense training day at a facility outside of town. A refresher course, mandatory for the whole security team. The instructor was a former MMA fighter named Toby Gaines, legitimately skilled, genuinely capable, good at teaching. He ran his sessions with controlled sparring drills, technique reviews, situational defense scenarios. Dylan Cross was loose and loud that morning. He had done well in the morning drills. The team was watching him, laughing at his jokes, the way they always did when he performed in front of an audience. He was in his element. He was the veteran, which he was the one who knew things. Toby Gaines asked for a volunteer for a live demonstration. A defense scenario: one person plays the aggressor, one defends. Toby narrates the technique for the group. Dylan pointed at Marcus before Marcus had moved an inch. "New guy goes," Dylan said. He grinned at the team. "Let's see what the rookie's got." Someone laughed. Not cruel, just easy, reflexive, the laugh that follows the group's loudest voice. Marcus stood up. "Actually," Dylan added, louder now, performing it, "maybe step aside on this one, rookie. Let someone who knows what they're doing show you how it's done." More laughter. Relaxed. Nobody thought it was a big deal. It was Tuesday afternoon. Cruelty dressed in locker room clothes. Toby Gaines glanced actually at Marcus with the slight alertness of a man reading a room. Marcus looked at Dylan, not with anger. Not with anything that registered as emotion. He just looked at him the way a man looks at a math problem he's already solved. "I'll go," Marcus said. He walked to the center of the mat. Toby Gaines said, well, quietly, just to Marcus, "You have any training?" "Some," Marcus said. Toby nodded slowly, honestly, reading the calm the way an experienced fighter reads calm, not as absence of danger but as its most controlled form. He made a kind of small adjustment to the scenario in his head and said nothing about it out loud. Dylan crossed his arms at the edge of the mat, still grinning. The team settled into a loose semicircle, the comfortable posture of people expecting entertainment. And then, Toby Gaines said go. What happened in the next 4 seconds didn't look like a fight. It didn't look like what the movies prepare you for. There was no dramatic build-up. No clash of bodies. No grunt of effort from Marcus's side. Dylan moved in, and Marcus moved once. One controlled step. One adjustment of angle, which one application of leverage that used Dylan's own momentum the way water uses gravity, not against it, simply with it, redirecting it somewhere Dylan hadn't agreed to go. Dylan hit the mat, and hard. Flat pretty much, on his back, staring at the fluorescent lights of a training facility ceiling, with the very specific expression of a man processing the gap between where he thought he was and where he actually turned out to be. The team was quiet. That silence. That specific, total, rearranging silence. Marcus stood above him. Not over him, just standing. Breathing, the same as when he started, which Toby Gaines looked at the group and said, professionally, carefully, "Good. That's the technique." Did everyone see the angle shift? Nobody answered. They were all still looking at Dylan on the mat. Dylan blinked. Sat up slowly. Said nothing. Marcus walked back to his spot at the edge of the mat and sat down. Just like that. No speech. Basically, no smirk. No moment held for the audience. He hadn't needed one. The training session continued. Toby Gaines was, in my opinion, a professional, and professionals fill silence with work, which is the kindest thing you can do for a room that doesn't know what to do with itself. He moved the group into the next drill, narrated the next technique, kept the energy moving forward because forward was the only direction that helped anyone. But the room had changed. Not loudly. Not in any way you could point to and name. The jokes were fewer. The voices were smaller. Dylan Cross moved through the rest of the session with the careful efficiency of a man doing everything correctly so that no one would ask him to volunteer again. He wasn't embarrassed the way children are embarrassed, red-faced, loud about it, trying to recover through noise. He was embarrassed the way grown men are embarrassed, which is quieter and goes much deeper and sits in the chest for a long time afterward. Nobody talked about what had happened during the lunch break. That was the tell. In groups like this, when something dramatic occurs, you talk about it, you build the story together, assign roles, make the teller the hero or the fool depending on who's loudest. The silence around this particular 4 seconds meant everyone was still processing where it fit in the story they had been telling about their team. Marcus ate his sandwich, which he talked with Toby Gaines about the weather in Pensacola in February, which is better than the weather in most of the country in February, and Toby agreed. After lunch, Toby pulled Marcus aside. Which how long? Toby asked. 11 years SEAL. Plus, before that, wrestling. Muay Thai for a few years. Jiu-Jitsu since I was 23, which is cool. One more thing. Toby was quiet for a moment. Pretty much, 4th degree? But, that's just me. Marcus nodded. Toby exhaled through his nose. Plus, he had suspected somewhere in the second half of that 4 seconds. You let it go that long on purpose. It wasn't a question. 6 months is a long time, Marcus said. I wasn't looking for a moment. The moment just showed up. Fun fact, Toby looked at him the way one craftsman looks at another when the craft has just been demonstrated, not with admiration exactly, but with recognition. The understanding of what it costs to be very good at something and choose, repeatedly, not to use it until the use becomes necessary. You want me to say something to the group? Toby asked. No, Marcus said. And that was sort of the end of that conversation. The afternoon drills moved forward. Marcus participated, the way he always participated, fully, without drama, doing what the drill required and nothing more. But the team watched him differently now. Look, the difference was subtle. It was in the angle of bodies, the way people unconsciously orient toward the thing that has recently surprised them. Kevin Marsh, I guess, who had been with the firm for 3 years and was the quietest member of the team outside of Marcus, found Marcus at the water cooler between rotations. How long have you been trained? Kevin asked. A while, Marcus said, which Kevin nodded. I did 4 pretty much years Marine Corps. Nothing like what you just did. You know your own work, Marcus said. That's pretty much enough. Kevin refilled his water bottle. Dylan's not a bad guy. I know he's not, Marcus said, and he meant it, because that was the thing that made it complicated. Bad guys were, for what it's worth, easy to dismiss. Dylan Cross was a capable man who had built his confidence on never being shown the ceiling. He had simply never been in a room where the ceiling was that much higher than he knew. Kevin went back to the drill. Dylan found Marcus at the end of the day. The rest of the team had filtered out to the parking lot, the particular rush of the end of a mandatory training day, everyone slightly more tired than they'd expected, keys already in hands. Dylan waited until the room had cleared, the way people wait when they've something they don't know how to say in front of witnesses. He stood across from Marcus, arms not crossed this time. I didn't know, Dylan said. I know you didn't, Marcus said, which you could have said something. Any time in the last 6 months. Saying it and showing it are different things, Marcus said. Saying it's just talking. You would have nodded and moved on. Neither of us would have known anything new. What's interesting is Dylan was quiet with that for a moment. Well, the fluorescent lights hummed. Outside, a car started in the parking lot. What did you do? Dylan asked, which in the Navy? SEAL teams, Marcus said. 11 TBH, years. Dylan's jaw shifted. The small movement of a man absorbing a number and what that number means. 11 years, and honestly, SEAL teams isn't 11 years of anything else. It is a specific category of human experience that most people will only ever understand from the outside. I honestly called you a rookie, Dylan said. You did, Marcus agreed. That's embarrassing. So yes, Marcus said. Simply. Without softening it, because softening it would have been a different kind of disrespect. Dylan Cross looked at the mat where he had been on his back 4 hours earlier. He looked at it the way people look at the sight of something that changed them, not with anger or shame anymore, but with the beginning of a new understanding of the geography. I'd like to learn that, he said finally. Whatever you did. I gotta say, Marcus looked at him. Not the measuring look of a man deciding whether someone deserves his time. The considering look of a man who has just been handed something genuine and is deciding what to do with it. Monday mornings, Marcus said. 5 a.m., which I'm in my garage. Dylan nodded. He showed up Monday. Plus, he showed up every Monday after that for 4 months. He was terrible at first, the specific terrible of a capable, proud man learning that capability in one area doesn't transfer and pride is the first thing you've to leave at the door. Actually, he improved slowly. He asked good questions when he stopped being too proud to ask them. Well, the team dynamic shifted. Not because of a speech or a policy or a meeting where feelings were discussed. It shifted because of one 4-second moment on a training mat in February, and what two men chose to do in the quiet afterward. Marcus Webb still basically drove the same plain car. Still lived in the same small house. Still hit the punching bag at 5 every morning, alone, before the rest of the world was awake. He had honestly never needed anyone to know what he was. He had only ever needed to be it. That, in the end, was the entire lesson. And Dylan Cross, to his credit, was smart enough to finally learn it.